The previous modules were based on some of the discussions on basic R. But from this module onwards, we will start discussing different aspects of advanced programming in R. In this course, we will discuss functional programming, object-oriented programming, and meta-programming, and many more. Now, the question is, why do we need to learn these kinds of programming? Because R offers us a really well-constructed advanced programming structures. In this module, we will start discussing about different aspects of object-oriented programming. Now, this phrase seems to be new to most of you. In this module, we will going to discuss why we will learn this object-oriented programming, and with the help of several examples, we will demonstrate the use of this programming. So, let's start the discussion. In this module, we will be discussing about object-oriented programming in R. By now, we have some ideas about how can we use R as a mode of programming. Now, before adding the word object with programming, let us think of what a language is from a general point of view. So, let's make the thing much more simpler. In our everyday life, we, the human beings, use language to express our thoughts. Language is a collection of words in a structured and conventional way. It changes even within a province. As a result of this, most of the times a new language seems to be ambiguous to us. Now the question is, why this ambiguity? What are the reasons behind it? The simple reason is that most of the languages consist of a large number of generic terms, whose meaning absolutely depends on the context they are used. Although it may appear a bit difficult to somebody who is not habituated with the language, but it actually provides an immense help to those who speaks in this language, because it enables them to get by with a much smaller vocabulary. Now, let us go back to the context of our R programming and see how we can relate the two. Here, consider the Kurds and Irish dataset in R. Here, just by typing the following commands, we can have the two plots which are shown here. Now, have a close look at these two plots. Although we are applying the same plot function here, we are coming up with two different types of plots. In the first one, we have just a scatter plot having speed and distance in the x and y axis respectively, whereas in the second, we are actually having a scatter plot matrix. The same thing will happen if we try to get the summary of the two datasets, or we wish to fit a linear model using the variables involved in these two datasets. Here also, using these sets of commands, we will come up with different types of outputs, although we are actually using the same function. Now, the question is, why is this happening? To get the answer, look at the datasets that we are considering. The first one, that is the Kurds dataset, provides us information regarding the speed and distance covered for 50 cards, whereas the Irish dataset is providing us the sepal length, width and petal width of 3 species of Irish, namely Iris setosa, Iris versicolor and Iris virginica. So here what R is doing is that it is plotting the dataset considering the type of it. That is, the plot is dependent on the type of the dataset. This thing is very important here. here comes the idea of generic functions. What does it mean? It means that it is such kind of a function where the output depends on the types of arguments the function is being applied to. Now, because the output which occurs is determined by the objects passed as arguments, this kind of computer programming is known as object-oriented programming. So, basically, this is object-dependent. So, from now on, we will start studying a few details of object-oriented programming in R. Here, we are going to have an overview of object-oriented programming through this course, so we will not discuss much deeper things here. Anyways, let's start with the components of the object-oriented programming. Primarily, it has two components, classes and methods. In R, all software entities are objects and the objects belong to classes. The other component, that is method, is a generic function that behaves differently with different objects. So in R, what we want is a generic function which will tell us what we want to do, and a method that tells how to do it with an object of a specific class. Now let's have some ideas about classes. The most important as well as interesting thing here is that when R was created, primarily our object system was not there. This was added after some times. As a result of this, not all our objects are defined using class system. Despite of the fact, all our objects have an implied class. So, now the question is how to obtain that class. This can simply be obtained by using the class function. Let's see how this function works. The basic vector types correspond to the classes logical, numeric, character, and complex, and the lists belong to the list class. So, after reading the previous modules, by now we all are familiar with these classes. But from now on, we will start relating these classes and objects with object-oriented programming. Just by typing class before the basic vector type or the list, we will be able to know the class of them. Like here, applying this function, we come to know that the digit 124, the word programming, and the list with the digits 3 and 4 belong to the class numeric, character, and list respectively. Now let's move one step further. Even some more complex R objects also belong to some classes. Take the example of matrices, like the one we have given here. This is simply a matrix and it belongs to the matrix class. Here the interesting thing is that although the types of elements of these objects differ, that is, the first one contains numerical digits, whereas the second one consists of letters, but both of them belong to the class matrix. Also, these higher arrays belong to the array class, like the one we have given here. Now let's consider an example to have a closer look. Here, we develop a class that handles numerical data associated with the locations in the XY plane. The actual locations will be stored in vectors containing separately the XY coordinates of the locations. Now let's start with the number of points, say 6 points in XY plane. So basically we are creating the locations. Here we have drawn them from standard normal distribution and restricting them up to 2 significant figures. Now store them in a list bearing the name PTS which is an abbreviation of points. So this is how it looks like. Now we are considering our newly made structure to be a special one. So we want to attach a class to it. So the question is how to add that. Just name your newly made class with the name location through the command which is written here. And now if you ask for the PTS variable, that is points variable, it will come with the class location. So have a look at the output. So the whole task of creating an object looks pretty simple, but the real thing is that it is coming up with some adverse things. Just adding a class to a value can be dangerous, as the values may contain some inappropriate elements. So what to do next? Here comes the idea of constructor function. The idea is to wrap the object inside a constructor function. So basically it acts as a wrapper. The constructor function is made to execute some basic checks. So for our locator class, what do we need to check? Firstly, it should be ensured that the vectors should have equal lengths. Why? Because for each of the x points there should be a y, otherwise it can't be considered as coordinate. So there should be a pair of x and y. Secondly, the x and y vectors should belong to the class numeric, that is, x and y vectors should contain numeric values. And finally, they should have all finite values and missing values should not be there. So it should not contain any not available, not a number, or infinite values. Now let's consider the constructor function. All the criterions that we just discussed are included here. This function also includes some messages like if either x or y contains any infinite value, the error message should be infinite coordinates, and if the length of x does not match that of y, then we will have the message coordinate lengths differ. So all the things are included in the function. Now, after defining the constructor function, let us again define the coordinates or the location vectors through almost the same command. The only difference is that here we are replacing list by a constructor function location, and the output will look like this one. It may be noted that here we are coming up with different set of points with respect to the previous one. Since we are generating random numbers from standard normal and the seed values have not been fixed. Now let's examine or test whether the constructor function is rightly working or functioning or not. For this, just input x as a vector of length 5 instead of 6, which was previously given, and all the other things remain the same. Then R will give us the error message which reads coordinate lengths differ. So this shows that the function is working properly. Now suppose we want to discard the class information from any object. Then what do? We can always discard the class information which is there in the object by using the unclass command. Now recall that when the coordinates of location was stored, it was stored as a list. Hence, it might be difficult to extract the vectors of x and y ordinates separately from it. So, what do we do here is that we will define accessor functions that will return the components easily. Like here, x location is the accessor function to extract the x ordinates and y location is that for the y ordinates. So these are some basic guide for object-oriented programming in R. Some more things are there that are needed to be recognized in this regard. As for example, R's object system that includes S3, S4 and reference classes. So through this example, as we can clearly see, from now on, we can develop a class that handles numerical data associated with the locations in the xy plane. We come to know how a constructor function is written in order to wrap up the object inside it. Also, through this example, by now we know the methods of checking the functionality of a constructor function, and the main focus was given towards the fact that whether this function is working properly or not. So primarily, what we come to know from this module is the basic ideas of object-oriented programming, specifically in the context of R. By now, we also have some ideas of the two components of object-oriented programming, that is classes and methods. We had some details regarding the ideas of object around which the object-oriented programming revolves, the ideas of generic functions, locator functions, constructor functions, and many more. With the help of an extensive example, these concepts got even clearer to us by now. But these are some ideas which are given from a general point of view. In the next two modules, we would rather become more technical and we'll try to look at the object-oriented system from a slightly different point of view. The things like methods, classes, constructor functions, locator functions, all will be there in the next discussions as well, but they will be discussed under certain object-oriented classes. By this, what we mean is that in the next two modules, we will be discussing about the different object-oriented system that R offers us. Primarily, these systems include the most popular S3 and S4 object system and the reference classes. So, the concepts of the functions and classes will be discussed under each of these object-oriented system wherever they are applicable. The immediate next module will be dedicated more towards the characteristics of the S3 object system. We will come to know the details regarding what it is actually and what it offers us. It is needless to say that this is the simplest of the other systems and hence obviously this is easier to handle. But again, nothing comes easily, and since this is the simplest one, hence it comes with some problems. We will go for the next one hence. Our next module will start with those reasons that compel us to search for any other object system, and then some detailed discussions will be there considering the S4 system. The interesting part of the S4 system that will come to us is that this system maintains hierarchy. So, the discussions regarding the parent classes and the elements of it will be there in details. Also, some discussions will be there considering the newest feather to object-oriented system in R, which is reference classes. we will come to know that these methods actually belong to objects, not functions. We will give some extensive overview on these in the next module. Till then, try and understand the topics that are covered in this module, because these are the stepping stone to understand the slightly difficult topics that we will discuss in the next module. This discussion tells us some of the basic aspects of object-oriented programming. The example which were there in the last part had given us some idea about the mechanism of object-oriented system, that is how it works. But we need to learn more about this system, and we are stopping for now, and we will continue this discussion in the next module as well.